The morning Jonas Jarrett discovered the symbol carved into his fence post, the air tasted like rain and something darker, like iron and intention. He stood there with his axe balanced on one shoulder, still sweating from splitting wood, and traced the unfamiliar curves with his free hand. The carving was fresh, the exposed wood pale against the weathered gray of the post. It looked like interlocking crescents arranged around a central triangle, all carved with precision that spoke of deliberate meaning rather than random vandalism. Jonas had lived on this frontier homestead for 3 years now, ever since he had mustered out of the territorial militia with a limp and a desire for solitude. His nearest neighbor was 5 miles south, and the Orc territories lay somewhere beyond the northern ridge. He had built his life here on the principle of being left alone, working his small farm and hunting enough game to supplement what the thin soil could produce. The symbol felt like an intrusion, a message he could not read but knew was meant for him to see. He heard her before he saw her. Footsteps, too heavy to be deer, too measured to be a predator. Jonas turned slowly, his hand dropping to the knife at his belt out of old habit. She emerged from the tree line with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going, and when she saw him standing by the post, her face broke into an expression somewhere between satisfaction and nervousness. She was orcish, that much was immediately clear. Her skin was the deep green of summer moss, and when she smiled tentatively at him, he could see the small tusks that curved up from her lower jaw. She wore practical clothing, leather breeches and a tunic that had seen hard use, and her dark hair was bound back in a thick braid that fell to her waist. She was tall, perhaps only a few inches shorter than his own 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the kind of muscular build that came from a life of physical work. "You found it," she said, her voice carrying across the clearing between them. There was a slight accent to her words, a different cadence than the human settlers used. Jonas kept his hand near his knife but did not draw it. "I found something carved into my property. You want to tell me what it means?" She walked closer, and he could see now that she was young, probably close to his own 24 years. Her eyes were amber-colored, bright against her green skin, and they held a mixture of hope and defiance that he recognized from his own mirror on difficult mornings. "It is the symbol of the Stonefang clan," she said, stopping a respectful distance away. "My clan. Well, my former clan." Something flickered across her face, pain quickly masked. "I carved it there yesterday. Now they know you are mine." The statement hung in the air between them, absurd and confusing. Jonas lowered his axe to the ground, leaning it against the fence post. "I do not know you. How exactly am I yours?" She lifted her chin, and he saw the gesture was defensive, preparing for rejection or anger. "I have been watching you for 2 months. Since the spring thaw, I know you live alone. I know you hunt the eastern woods on 7th day. I know you favor your left leg when the weather turns cold. I know you are kind, because I have seen you leave meat for the widow Thompson when you ride to the trading post, and you do not take credit for it." Jonas felt his face heat with embarrassment and something else, a strange feeling that someone had seen him so clearly. "That does not explain the symbol or your claim. Among my people, when a woman chooses a mate, she marks her intention publicly. The symbol tells any orc who sees it that you are claimed, that I have declared my intent to court you." She took a breath, and he saw her hands were trembling slightly. "I know it is not the human way. I know you do not understand, but I had to do something. My clan has cast me out and I have nowhere else to go. I have chosen you." The words tumbled out in a rush, and Jonas found himself trying to process multiple impossible things at once. An orc woman had been watching him for months. She had been exiled from her clan. She had chosen him, whatever that meant in Orcish custom, and she expected him to simply accept this. "I think you had better start from the beginning," he said finally, "and maybe tell me your name." Relief washed across her face so clearly that he felt something in his chest constrict. "Zyra. My name is Zyra Stonefang, though I suppose I have no right to the clan name anymore. Jonas Jarrett, and I think you should come inside and explain this properly." He saw her eyes widen in surprise. "It is going to rain soon, and if we are going to have this conversation, I would rather not do it standing in my yard." Zyra followed him to the small cabin he had built, and Jonas found himself acutely aware of how modest his home must seem. One main room with a hearth, a sleeping alcove, a table he had built himself from rough planks. She stood awkwardly just inside the door until he gestured to one of the two chairs at the table. "Sit. I will make tea." It seemed absurd to offer hospitality to someone who had carved symbols into his property and declared him hers. But his mother had raised him with certain courtesies, and they were hard to shake even in the most bizarre circumstances. As he worked at the hearth, coaxing the morning coals back to life and hanging the kettle, Zyra spoke. Her voice was quiet at first, as if she was not used to explaining herself. "The Stonefang clan ranges the northern territories, between the Ridge and the White River. We are hunters, traders, warriors when we must be. I was raised to all of those things, but I was also different. I liked humans, not just tolerated them but found them interesting. I would watch the trading posts from a distance, listen to your stories, wonder about your lives." She paused, and Jonas heard the pain in her voice. "My curiosity was seen as weakness, my sympathy as betrayal." Jonas poured tea into 2 wooden cups and brought them to the table, sitting across from her. "What happened? 6 months ago, a human hunting party strayed into our territory. They were lost, young men from one of the southern settlements. My cousins wanted to kill them as trespassers. I argued against it. I said we should guide them back to the border and send them home with a warning." Her hands wrapped around the cup, seeking its warmth. "The clan elders were divided. In the end, they decided to follow my counsel. But when the humans returned home, they told stories, said they had been captured by monsters and barely escaped with their lives, said orcs were planning raids on human settlements." "Were they?" Jonas asked quietly. "No. We wanted only to be left alone, but the humans believed the lies and they came with weapons. There was a fight. 3 of my clan died and twice that many humans." Her voice was flat now, recounting facts. "My clan blamed me, said my softness toward humans had brought disaster. The clan mother gave me a choice: renounce my foolish sympathy and prove my loyalty by leading a raid on a human farm or be cast out forever." Jonas felt cold despite the warmth of the tea. "You chose exile. I could not kill innocent people to prove I was a good orc, so yes, I chose exile. They took my weapons, my supplies, everything but the clothes I wore. They told me I was dead to them, and if I returned, they would make it real." Her amber eyes met his. "I have been living in the woods since then, surviving as best I could, and I have been watching you. Why me?" The question came out more desperate than he intended. Zyra's face softened. "Because you are alone but not bitter. Because you are strong but gentle. Because I saw you nurse an injured rabbit back to health and release it, even though you could have eaten it. Because when that drunk man tried to cheat the merchant at the trading post, you intervened even though it was not your concern. Because you seemed like someone who might understand what it is to be cast out from where you belong." Jonas thought about his own exile, though it had been self-imposed. Leaving the militia after watching too many friends die in pointless border skirmishes. Coming to this remote place because he could not stand the noise and demands of town life anymore. The nightmares that still woke him some nights, The way loud noises made him flinch even now. "I am not a hero from a story," he said quietly. "I am just a farmer trying to get by. I do not need a hero. I need a chance." Her voice was fierce now, urgent. "Among my people, the carving is a formal declaration. It tells any orc who sees it that you are under my protection, that to harm you is to challenge me. But it also means I am asking you to consider me, to let me stay, to see if we might build something together. You are asking me to accept an orcish courtship custom that I do not understand with someone I just met, based on 2 months of watching me without my knowledge." Jonas said it flatly, trying to make her see how absurd it sounded. "Yes," Zyra said simply. "I know it is strange. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I am asking anyway, because I have nothing else left to ask with." The rain began then, pattering against the roof and then building to a steady drum. Jonas looked at this orcish woman sitting at his table, exiled and alone, who had chosen him for reasons he could not fully comprehend. Every practical part of his mind screamed that this was dangerous, foolish, impossible. The frontier was already suspicious of anyone who consorted with orcs. If word got out, he could face his own exile from human society. But he looked at her face, at the desperate hope barely hidden behind her fierce pride, and he thought about his own loneliness. About the long evenings with no one to talk to, the way he sometimes forgot what his own voice sounded like. About the empty space across the table that had never bothered him until this moment when someone was sitting in it. "I will not promise you anything," he said finally, "but you can stay. There is a lean-to behind the cabin where I store tools. We can make it weatherproof, give you a place to sleep. You can help with the farm work, and I will feed you and keep you safe as I am able. But I need time to understand this, to figure out what it means." The transformation in Zyra's face was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. Her smile was radiant, showing her small tusks, and her eyes shone with unshed tears. "Thank you. You will not regret this. I swear I will work hard. I will earn my keep. I will just drink your tea before it gets cold," Jonas said, but he was smiling despite himself. "And then we will figure out how to make that lean-to livable before the rain gets worse." They worked through the afternoon, and Jonas found that Zyra had not exaggerated her strength or capability. She hauled boards and hammered nails with easy competence, and her suggestions for reinforcing the structure were sound. By evening, they had created a snug space with a raised pallet for sleeping and hooks for hanging clothes and supplies. Jonas contributed a spare blanket and one of his 2 pillows, refusing her protests that she needed nothing. "Winter is coming eventually," he said. "You will need to stay warm." They ate dinner together as the rain continued, a simple stew Jonas had started that morning. Zyra ate with obvious hunger but also with careful manners, and he noticed she kept looking around the cabin as if memorizing every detail. "Tomorrow, I will show you the property," Jonas said. "Where the fields are, where I hunt, where the boundaries lie. If you are going to stay, you should know the land." "I already know much of it," Zyra admitted, "from watching, but I would like to see it with you, to have you show me what matters to you about it." It was an oddly intimate thing to say, and Jonas felt that strange warmth in his chest again. He cleared his throat. "Right, well, we should sleep. Morning comes early on a farm." Zyra stood, gathering her plate. "Jonas, thank you not just for the shelter, for listening, for not sending me away." "It is just a trial," he said, but the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. Something had shifted in the fabric of his life, and he suspected there would be no going back to the simplicity of solitude. That night, lying in his alcove, Jonas listened to the rain and thought about amber eyes and a desperate hope. He thought about the symbol carved into his fence post, claiming him for someone else's clan, someone else's future. He thought about how afraid he had been, and how afraid Zyra must have been, and how they were both taking a chance on something that made no logical sense. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, he dreamed of green skin and shared laughter, and for once, the nightmares stayed away. The next weeks fell into a pattern that surprised Jonas with its ease. Zyra rose before dawn and worked until her hands were blistered and her muscles trembling. She weeded the vegetable garden with meticulous care, repaired sections of fencing that Jonas had been putting off, and proved to be an excellent hunter with the bow he reluctantly lent her. She brought down deer with clean shots and dressed them with efficiency, and she foraged for herbs and mushrooms he had not known were edible. But more than her work, it was her presence that changed things. She sang while she worked, orcish songs in a language he did not understand, with melodies that were strange and beautiful. She asked him questions about farming, about human customs, about his life before the homestead. She listened with genuine interest when he talked about his mother's herb garden in the town where he grew up, or the friends he had lost in the militia, or his dreams of making this farm truly prosper. In return, she told him about orcish life, about the clan structure, where every member had a role and the good of the group outweighed individual desires, about the harsh honor code that valued strength and loyalty above all else, about the stories her grandmother had told her, of ancient days when orcs and humans had not been enemies but trading partners, before wars and prejudice had driven them apart. "You miss them?" Jonas asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Your clan." Zyra was quiet for a long moment. "I miss what I thought they were. The idea of belonging somewhere, of having people who knew you and valued you. But the reality. The constant pressure to be harder, meaner, more willing to hurt others. No, I do not miss that." "I know something about leaving behind what you thought was home," Jonas said. "After the militia, I could not go back to town life. Everything felt wrong. Too loud, too crowded, too many people who did not understand what I had seen. My mother cried when I left, said I was throwing away my future. Maybe I was, but I could not breathe there anymore." "Do you regret it?" Zyra turned to look at him, and in the fading light her eyes seemed to glow. "No. It has been lonely, but it has been mine. I answer to no one, live by my own choices. There is freedom in that." He paused. "Though it has been less lonely recently." Zyra smiled, and Jonas felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. Over the past weeks, he had grown accustomed to her presence in ways that should have alarmed him. He liked the sound of her voice, the way she laughed at his dry humor, the competent way she moved through tasks. He liked watching her face when she was concentrating, the small furrow that appeared between her brows. He liked the way she listened to him, really listened, as if his words mattered. He realized with a mixture of terror and inevitability, beginning to care for her. The realization terrified him because it made everything complicated. This was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, a kindness extended to someone in need. But every day, it felt less temporary and more like something he wanted to keep. And that was dangerous, because Zyra was orcish and he was human, and the world had strong opinions about such things. As if summoned by his thoughts, the world chose that moment to intrude. 3 riders appeared on the southern path, and Jonas recognized them immediately. Garrett Stone and his 2 sons, neighbors from the nearest homestead. They were hard men, suspicious of outsiders and quick to anger. "Stay inside," Jonas said quietly to Zyra. "Keep out of sight." "I will not hide," she said, her jaw set stubbornly. "Please, just trust me. If they see you, there will be trouble." He looked at her urgently. "Please, Zyra." Something in his face must have convinced her, because she slipped inside the cabin just as the riders came into the yard. Jonas stood and walked down the porch steps, keeping his posture casual but his senses alert. "Jarrett, boys, what brings you out this way?" Jonas kept his voice friendly, neutral. Jarrett Stone was a thick-shouldered man with a beard going gray and eyes that never seemed to warm even when he smiled. "Heard some disturbing rumors at the trading post, Jarrett. Thought I should come check on my neighbor." "What kind of rumors?" Jonas leaned against the porch railing, forcing himself to appear unconcerned. "Rumors about orcish signs being seen in the area. Some of the hunters claim they spotted fresh carvings on trees and posts. Clan symbols, they said." Jarrett's eyes were sharp, watching Jonas's reaction. "You seen anything like that on your land?" Jonas thought about the symbol on his fence post, still fresh and clear. He thought about lying, but these men would find it eventually if they looked. "I found a carving on one of my posts a few weeks back. I figured it was just vandalism, sanded it down and forgot about it." It was a lie, and he suspected Jarrett knew it, but it was plausible enough to create doubt. "Interesting. See, the thing is, those symbols are not just decoration. They are claims, marks that say someone belongs to an orc clan or is under their protection, or is being courted by one of them." Jarrett's tone was conversational, but there was steel underneath. "Now, why would an orc be marking your property, Jarrett? I have no idea. Maybe they have me confused with someone else. Maybe it is a threat. Your guess is as good as mine." Jonas met Jarrett's eyes steadily. "But I assure you I have no dealings with orcs." One of Jarrett's sons, a broad youth named Dale, spoke up. "We should search the property. Make sure he is not harboring any of those monsters." "That will not be necessary," Jonas said, and his voice hardened. "This is my land, and you have no right to search it without cause." "We have cause if you are consorting with orcs," Jarrett said flatly. "That is a threat to all of us. If they think you are friendly, they will come closer, and where one orc comes, more follow." Jonas felt anger rising in his chest, hot and sharp. "I am not consorting with anyone. I live alone, I farm my land, and I bother no one. Now I have been polite, but you are starting to overstep." For a moment, the tension crackled between them, and Jonas thought it might come to violence. Then Jarrett smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "Easy, Jarrett. I am just looking out for the community, but I will be watching. And if I find out you are lying, if there is even a hint that you are betraying your own kind, there will be consequences." They rode away, and Jonas stood in the yard until they were out of sight, his hands shaking with suppressed emotion. When he turned back to the cabin, Zyra was standing in the doorway, her face tight with worry. "They will come back," she said quietly. "And next time they will look harder, I know." Jonas climbed the steps and stood beside her. "But I am not going to throw you out because of their prejudice." "Why?" The question was soft, almost vulnerable. "Why are you protecting me? You could send me away and your life would be simpler. Why risk their anger?" Jonas looked at her, at this strong, fierce woman who had chosen him for reasons he still did not fully understand. "Because it is the right thing to do, and because I do not want you to go." The admission hung between them, and he saw something shift in Zyra's expression, a dawning hope mixed with fear. "Jonas, she started, but he shook his head. "Not now. We have more practical concerns. If Jarrett is suspicious, others will be too. We need to be more careful. You should stay close to the cabin, avoid being seen from the paths." It hurt to say it, to restrict her freedom when she had just found it, but he could see no other way. "I will not be a prisoner," Zyra said, her voice firm. "I will not hide like I am ashamed. It is not about shame. It is about survival for both of us." Jonas felt frustrated, torn between wanting to protect her and respecting her independence. "Please, just until we figure out what to do." Zyra stared at him for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. For now. But Jonas, you must understand. Among my people, hiding is cowardice. If I am to court you, I should do it openly with pride. Your people are not the ones who will burn my farm and drive us both out, Jonas said, more harshly than he intended. He saw her flinch and immediately regretted his tone. I am sorry. I just need time to think, to figure out how to make this work. She touched his arm gently, and even through his sleeve he could feel the warmth of her hand. I know, and I am grateful that you are trying. That night, Jonas lay awake, wrestling with impossible questions. He could not deny anymore that he cared for Zyra, that his feelings had grown beyond simple kindness into something deeper and more complicated. But how could they build a life together when the world around them would not allow it? How could he protect her from people like Garrett Stone, who saw orcs as monsters to be eliminated? The answer, when it came, was not comforting. He could not protect her, not completely. But he could stand beside her, could refuse to hide or be ashamed, could fight for the right to choose his own path, even if others disapproved. It would be hard and dangerous, and quite possibly end badly. But the alternative, sending her away and returning to his lonely existence, felt like a worse kind of death. In the morning, he found Zyra already awake, sitting on the porch with her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the sunrise. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. I have been thinking, he said quietly, about what you said about courting openly. You are right that hiding feels like cowardice, but I need you to understand what you are asking. If we do this, if we openly acknowledge what is between us, there will be consequences. People will turn against me. They might do worse than that. Are you willing to accept that? Zyra turned to him, and her eyes were bright with emotion. I have already lost my clan, my home, everything I knew. But I have also gained something I never expected. Someone who sees me as more than my strength or usefulness. Someone who listens when I speak, who values my thoughts. Someone who makes me laugh and feel safe and want things I never thought I could have. She took a breath. Yes, I am willing to accept the consequences. The question is, are you? Jonas thought about his quiet life, his carefully maintained isolation. He thought about the future he had imagined, alone but independent. And then he thought about Zyra's laugh, the way she sang while she worked, the comfort of her presence across the table. He thought about the possibility of building something together, of not being alone anymore. Yes, he said simply. I am willing. The smile that broke across her face was like the sun emerging from clouds, radiant and warming. Without thinking, Jonas reached out and took her hand, and she threaded her fingers through his, her grip strong and sure. So what do we do now? She asked. Now we live our lives. We work the farm, we go to the trading post when we need supplies, and we do not hide. If people ask about you, I tell them the truth. That you are here, that you are under my protection, and that anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Jonas squeezed her hand. And we figure out the rest as we go. It was not a perfect plan or even a particularly good one. But it was honest, and it was brave, and it was a start. The next month brought changes, both expected and surprising. Jonas took Zyra with him to the trading post, and the reactions ranged from shock to anger to, occasionally, cautious curiosity. There was an old trader named Matthias who had fought alongside orcs in the border wars and who shook Zyra's hand with genuine respect. There was a young mother named Eliza who was fascinated by Zyra's knowledge of herbs and asked her advice on treating her son's persistent cough. But there were also men like Garrett Stone, who spread rumors that Jonas had been corrupted, bewitched, possibly held hostage by a monster. There were threats scrawled on paper and left at Jonas's property line. crude drawings of orcs being hanged or burned. There were nights when Jonas sat up with his rifle, watching the tree line for signs of trouble. Through it all, Zyra remained steady. She worked the farm with tireless energy, and she met hostility with dignity rather than anger. When children at the trading post stared at her with wide, frightened eyes, she smiled gently and offered them small carved figures she made from wood scraps. When men muttered insults within her hearing, she held her head high and ignored them. Jonas found himself constantly amazed by her strength, not the physical kind but the deeper resilience that allowed her to face rejection without becoming bitter. She was teaching him something about courage, about choosing kindness even when the world offered none in return. One evening in late summer, they sat by the stream that marked the eastern boundary of Jonas's property. The air was warm and heavy with the scent of wildflowers, and fireflies danced in the gathering dusk. Zyra had her feet in the water, and Jonas sat beside her, close enough that their arms touched. "Tell me about orcish courtship," Jonas said suddenly. "I know you carved the symbol, but what comes after that? What are the steps?" Zyra looked at him with surprise and something that might have been hope. "You want to know? I want to understand. If I am going to court you properly, I should know what that means in your culture." Her smile was soft, almost shy. Traditionally, after the claiming mark is made, there is a period of proving. The woman demonstrates her strength, her ability to provide and protect. She brings gifts, usually things she has hunted or crafted herself. She shows she can be a worthy partner. "You have been doing that since you arrived," Jonas pointed out. "The work, the hunting, the way you have contributed to the farm." "Yes, but there is more. The man must also demonstrate his worthiness. He must show he can accept her as she is, that he is not ashamed of her. He must defend her honor if challenged, and he must declare his intent to his own people to make the courtship formal and recognized." Jonas felt a flutter of nervousness in his chest. And if he does all that, what then? Then, if both agree, there is a binding ceremony. Among my people, it would involve blood oaths and the witnessing of clan elders. But I no longer have a clan, and you are human, so we would need to find our own way. She looked down at the water, her expression uncertain. But that is far in the future. First, there is the proving, the building of trust and understanding. "What if I told you I do not need more proving?" Jonas said quietly. "What if I told you I already know I want this, want you?" Zyra turned to stare at him, her amber eyes wide. "Jonas, you cannot mean that. We have known each other for only a few months. You cannot—" "I am not saying we should bind ourselves tomorrow," Jonas interrupted. "But I am saying that I know my own heart. I have been alone for a long time, Zyra. I thought I preferred it that way, but you have shown me something different. You have shown me what it means to have a partner, someone who shares the burden and the joy, someone who makes me want to be better, braver, more than I thought I could be." He took her hand, feeling the calluses on her palm, the strength in her fingers. "I am not ashamed of you. I am proud to stand beside you, and I will defend you against anyone who tries to harm you or drive you away. That is my declaration if you want it." Zyra's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment she could not speak. When she did, her voice was thick with emotion. "Among my people, when a man accepts a woman's claim, he gives her a gift in return. Something of value, something that shows his commitment." Jonas thought for a moment, then reached up and unfastened the leather cord he wore around his neck. On it hung a small carved wooden bird, worn smooth from years of handling. "My mother made this for me when I joined the militia. She said it was a sparrow to remind me to always find my way home. It is the most valuable thing I own, not because of what it is, but because of what it means." He placed it in Zyra's hand, closing her fingers around it. "I give this to you, and I declare my intent to court you, to build a life with you in whatever way we can make work." Zyra stared down at the small carving, then looked up at him with a face full of wonder and joy. "I accept your gift. I accept your declaration, and I swear to you, Jonas Jarrett, that I will be worthy of this trust. I will stand beside you, work with you, fight for you if needed. You have given me something I thought I would never have again: a home, a future. Someone who chooses me, not because of duty or clan obligation, but because of who I am." They sat there in the fading light, hands clasped, and Jonas felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was not the life he had planned, but it was better than anything he could have imagined. It was real and complicated and worth fighting for. The kiss, when it came, was soft and tentative. Zyra's lips were warm, and he could feel the slight pressure of her tusks against his mouth, strange but not unpleasant. She tasted like the mint tea she had been drinking, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright with emotion. "I have wanted to do that for a long time," she admitted. "So have I," Jonas said, and pulled her close again. They stayed by the stream until full dark, talking and kissing and planning a future that seemed impossible but also inevitable. And when they finally walked back to the cabin, hand in hand, Jonas felt lighter than he had in years. But the world, as it had a habit of doing, was not content to let them enjoy their happiness in peace. The trouble came a week later, in the form of 6 riders from the territorial militia. They arrived at mid-morning, and Jonas recognized the captain, a hard-faced man named Silas Crenshaw who had served with him years ago. They had never been friends, but they had respected each other's competence. "Jonas Jarrett," Silas said formally, "I am here on official business. There have been reports that you are harboring an orc on your property. I need to investigate these claims." Zyra stood beside Jonas on the porch, her chin lifted defiantly. Jonas kept his voice calm. "This is Zyra. She works my farm and shares my home. She has committed no crime and is under my protection." Silas's eyes flicked to Zyra, and something unreadable crossed his face. "You know the law. Orcs within human territories must be registered and monitored. Failure to report their presence is a criminal offense." "That is a stupid law designed to treat innocent people like criminals," Jonas said flatly. "Zyra has done nothing wrong. She has harmed no one. She wants only to live in peace. The law does not care what she wants, and neither do the people making the complaints." Silas dismounted, and his men followed suit. "I need you to come with us, Jarrett, both of you. There is going to be a hearing to determine what happens next. And if I refuse—" Jonas felt Zyra's hand slip into his, her grip tight. "Then I arrest you both by force. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. You were a good soldier once. You know how this works." Silas's tone was not unkind, but it was inflexible. Jonas thought about fighting, about barricading themselves in the cabin and making a stand. But that would only end one way, with blood spilled and nothing gained. He looked at Zyra, saw the fear and determination in her eyes, and made his decision. "We will come peacefully, but I want your word that Zyra will not be harmed or mistreated during this process." Silas hesitated, then nodded. "You have my word. She will be held securely but treated with basic decency. Now, both of you, come down from the porch slowly and keep your hands visible." The ride to the settlement took 3 hours, and every mile felt like a descent into nightmare. Jonas and Zyra were allowed to ride together but under close guard, and the militiamen watched them with a mixture of curiosity and hostility. When they arrived at the settlement, a crowd had already gathered, drawn by word of the orc being brought in. The hearing was held in the town hall, a large wooden building that served as everything from courthouse to community center. Jonas and Zyra were separated, and Jonas fought down panic as she was led away to a holding room. He was taken before a council of 5 prominent citizens, including Garrett Stone, who wore a satisfied smirk. The proceedings were brutal and efficient. Garrett testified about the orcish symbol, about his suspicions, about the danger of allowing orcs to live among humans. Other settlers spoke of attacks in the past, of raids and violence, painting all orcs as savage monsters. Jonas tried to speak in Zyra's defense, to explain that she was an exile who posed no threat, but his words were drowned out by fear and prejudice. In the end, the council's decision was predictable. Zyra was to be expelled from the territory, escorted to the border and forbidden to return on pain of death. Jonas was given a choice: renounce any connection to her and return to his farm with a warning, or be exiled alongside her. The room fell silent, waiting for his answer. Jonas stood, feeling the weight of every eye on him. He thought about his farm, the life he had built, the security of belonging to a community even if that community frustrated him. He thought about the easy choice, the safe choice. Then he thought about Zyra's face when she had told him about her clan's ultimatum, about how she had chosen exile over compromising her principles. He thought about the promises he had made, the declaration he had given. "I choose exile," he said clearly. "I stand with Zyra." The room erupted in noise, some shouting approval, others condemnation. Garrett Stone stood, his face red with anger. "You are a traitor to your own kind, Jarrett. You would choose a monster over your people." Jonas met his eyes steadily. "I choose the person I love over people who let fear make them cruel, and I do not regret it." They were given 1 hour to gather supplies and say goodbyes. Jonas was allowed to return to his cabin under guard, and he packed quickly, taking only what could be carried: food, blankets, tools, his rifle and ammunition. He left the cabin unlocked, unable to bear the thought of barricading what had been his refuge. Zyra was brought to meet him at the town's edge, and when he saw her, his heart broke a little. She had been crying, he could tell, though she held herself with rigid pride. But when she saw him, saw the pack on his back and the determination in his face, her expression transformed. "You came," she whispered. "You really came. Did you doubt it?" Jonas asked, taking her hand. "I hoped." But hoping and knowing are different things. She looked at the assembled crowd, at the militia men waiting to escort them to the border. "I am sorry, I never wanted this for you. I know, but I want this. I want you. The rest is just geography." He tried to smile, to ease the fear he saw in her eyes. Silas Crenshaw approached, and there was something almost apologetic in his bearing. "I am sorry it came to this, Jarrett. For what it is worth, I think you are making a mistake, but I respect that you are standing by your principles." He held out a small pouch. "Some of the townsfolk took up a collection. It is not much, but it might help you get started somewhere new." Jonas took the pouch, surprised by the weight of coins. "Thank you. Tell them I said thank you." The journey to the border was made in silence, and when they finally crossed the invisible line that marked the edge of human territory, the militia men turned back without ceremony. Jonas and Zyra stood alone in the wilderness, with nothing but what they could carry and each other. "So," Zyra said after a long moment, "what do we do now?" Jonas looked at her, at this woman who had appended his life and given him something infinitely more valuable than safety. "Now we find somewhere to build a new home, together." They walked north, toward the unclaimed lands that lay between human and orc territories. It was wild country, dangerous and unpredictable, but also free. They traveled for days, hunting small game and foraging, sleeping under the stars and talking about what kind of life they wanted to build. Jonas found he did not miss his farm as much as he thought he would. What he had missed, all those years of solitude, was this: partnership, companionship, someone to share the burden and the beauty of living. They found a valley 3 weeks into their journey, sheltered by hills and fed by a clear stream. There was good land for planting, forests for hunting, and a rock outcropping that would provide stone for building. It was perfect in its wildness, a blank canvas for them to create something new. They worked through the summer and into fall, building a small cabin and clearing land for a garden. It was hard work, back-breaking and exhausting, but they did it together. Zyra proved to be an excellent builder, and Jonas's farming knowledge served them well. They lived simply, but they lived well, and as the weeks passed, Jonas found himself happier than he could remember being. One evening in late autumn, as they sat by the fire in their newly completed cabin, Zyra spoke quietly. "I have been thinking about what you said by the stream. About courtship and declarations, about knowing your heart." Jonas looked up from the arrowheads he was sharpening. "And I think I am ready for the binding ceremony, if you still want that." Her voice was tentative, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. Jonas set down his work and moved to sit beside her. "Are you sure? We do not have a clan to witness, no elders to bless it. It would just be us making vows to each other." "That is all I need," Zyra said firmly. "My clan rejected me. Human society rejected us both. So we make our own traditions, our own family. You and me choosing each other every day." Jonas felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Then yes, I want that. I want to bind my life to yours in whatever way we decide that means." They spent the next days preparing. Zyra carved a new symbol, one that combined elements of Orcish clan marks with human family crests, creating something unique to them. Jonas gathered wildflowers and wove them into a crown, remembering dimly that human weddings involved such things. They both fasted for a day, an Orcish tradition of purification before major oaths. On the night they chose, they stood by the stream under a full moon. Zyra had explained the traditional Orcish binding, which involved small cuts on the palms and the mixing of blood. Jonas had agreed, understanding that this physical mingling was sacred to her. Zyra spoke first, her voice strong and clear in the moonlight. "I, Zyra, once of the Stonefang clan, now of no clan but the one I make with you, bind myself to Jonas Jarrett. I swear to stand with you in all things, to share your burdens and your joys, to protect you and provide for you, to be your partner in this life and whatever comes after. My blood to your blood, my strength to your strength, my heart to your heart." She made a small cut on her palm with a clean knife, and Jonas saw the dark blood well up, black in the moonlight. Jonas took the knife and did the same, feeling the sharp pain and then the warmth of his own blood. He pressed his palm to hers, feeling their blood mix and drip between their joined hands. "I, Jonas Jarrett, once of the town I left behind, now of the home we build together, bind myself to Zyra. I swear to stand with you in all things, to honor you and cherish you, to defend you and support you, to be your partner in this life and whatever comes after. My blood to your blood, my future to your future, my love to your love." They stood like that for a long moment, hands clasped, blood mingling, eyes locked. Then Zyra smiled and Jonas pulled her close and kissed her, tasting salt from the tears on both their faces. "We are bound," she whispered against his lips. "You are mine and I am yours." "Forever," Jonas agreed. "Or as close to forever as we can manage." They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, bound by blood and choice, by love and determination. And that night, they consummated their binding with a tenderness and passion that left them both breathless and changed. Winter came, and with it, challenges. The valley was colder than Jonas had anticipated, and their stores of food ran low. They hunted in the snow, tended their fire carefully, and learned to rely on each other completely. There were hard days when the cold seemed endless, when Jonas's old leg injury ached with the temperature, when Zyra grew melancholy thinking about the family she had lost. But there were also moments of profound beauty. Waking up to find Zyra's arms around him, her breath warm against his neck. Watching her face light up when she successfully brought down a winter elk. Sitting by the fire and telling stories, sharing their cultures and histories, weaving together a new narrative that belonged to both of them. One particularly harsh night when the wind howled outside and the cabin creaked with cold, Jonas woke to find Zyra crying silently. He pulled her close, wrapping them both in blankets. "What is wrong?" he asked gently. "I am scared," she admitted. "Scared that I have ruined your life. You had a home, a place in the world, and I took it from you. What if you grow to resent me? What if this is not enough?" Jonas tilted her face up to look at him. "Listen to me. I chose this, I chose you, and I would make the same choice 1,000 times over. Yes, I lost my farm. But I gained something infinitely more valuable. I gained a partner, a love, a reason to build something new. You did not ruin my life, Zyra. You saved it." She searched his face, looking for doubt or regret, and finding none, she finally relaxed into his embrace. "I love you," she whispered. "I do not think I have said that clearly enough. I love you, Jonas Jarrett." "I love you too," he said, and felt the truth of it warm him from the inside. Now and always. Spring came eventually, as it always does. The snow melted, the streams swelled with runoff, and the world turned green again. Jonas and Zyra emerged from their cabin thin but triumphant, having survived their first winter together. They planted their garden with seeds Jonas had saved, and ones they had gathered from the wild. They expanded the cabin, adding a second room and a proper loft for storage. They built a smokehouse for preserving meat and a small barn for the chickens they hoped to acquire eventually. Life fell into a rhythm, and as the months passed, Jonas found that his happiness only deepened. Zyra had stopped hiding the songs she sang, and her voice filled the valley with beautiful, haunting melodies. Jonas found himself humming along, learning the tunes even if he did not understand all the words. One day in late spring, as they worked side by side in the garden, Jonas heard voices in the distance. His hand went instinctively to the knife at his belt, and Zyra straightened, her eyes scanning the tree line. Two figures emerged from the forest, and Jonas relaxed slightly when he saw they were orcs, not humans. But Zyra went rigid, her face paling beneath her green skin. "That is my aunt," she whispered. "Khazra Stonefang, and my cousin Throck." The two orcs approached slowly, their hands visible and empty of weapons. The older female, Khazra, was broad and scarred, with iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. The younger male, Throck, was massive and muscled with the bearing of a warrior. They stopped a respectful distance away, and Khazra spoke in the orcish language. Zyra replied, her voice strained, and a conversation Jonas could not follow ensued. He watched Zyra's face, saw shock and pain, and something that might have been hope flash across her features. Finally, Zyra turned to him and switched to the common tongue. "They have come to speak with us, with me. My aunt asks if we can talk, if you will allow it." Jonas looked at the two orcs, measuring the threat and finding none. "Of course. Will you translate for me?" They moved to the cabin, and Jonas brought out water and the dried fruit they had stored. Khazra studied Jonas with frank curiosity, and when she spoke, Zyra translated carefully. "My aunt says that the clan has been in turmoil since I left. The human raid I mentioned, it has led to more conflict. Many orcs died, and many humans too. The clan mother who exiled me was killed in a battle 3 months ago. A new clan mother has been chosen, my aunt herself. She has come to apologize and to extend an offer." Jonas listened as Zyra continued, her voice strong but not aggressive. Zyra translated haltingly, emotion clear in her voice. She says the clan has learned a hard lesson, that hatred and inflexibility only breed more suffering, that I was right to try to find peace with humans, and they were wrong to punish me for it. She says she has come to offer me a place back in the clan if I want it, but more than that, she has come to acknowledge my binding to you, Jonas, to recognize it as valid and honorable. Jonas felt a shock of surprise. She would accept me. A human, more conversation, rapid and intense. Then Zyra smiled, her eyes bright with tears. She says that any human who would choose exile over betraying the woman he loves is worthy of respect. She says that if I vouch for you, the clan will accept you as one of our own, not as an outsider but as family. Jonas let the words sink in, trying to understand what was being offered. A place in an orc clan, recognition of his binding to Zyra, community and support instead of isolation. It was tempting, incredibly tempting, but he had to know more. What would that mean? What would be expected of us? He asked. Zyra and Zyra conversed again, and then Zyra explained. We would not have to leave this valley. The clan would recognize it as our territory, part of the larger clan holdings. We would contribute to the clan as we are able, through trade or hunting or sharing knowledge. We would participate in major gatherings and ceremonies, and we would be protected by clan law, which means any orc who harms us harms the entire Stonefang clan. And in return, Jonas pressed, we defend the clan if called upon. We honor clan customs and respect clan leadership. We raise any children we might have to know both human and orcish ways to be bridges between our peoples. Zyra looked at him with barely contained hope. Jonas, this is more than I ever dreamed was possible, to have you and my family to belong somewhere again. Jonas thought about it carefully. He had been exiled from human society for his choice, but here were orcs offering acceptance. It was not the life he had imagined, but it was a life filled with possibility and support and love. I accept, he said, looking directly at Zyra. I would be honored to be part of the Stonefang clan. Zyra smiled, showing her tusks, and spoke again. Zyra laughed, a sound of pure joy. She says you are braver than most orcs she knows, and she looks forward to hearing how you managed to keep me in line. The afternoon passed in conversation and planning. Zyra and Throck told them about the changes in the clan, about the efforts to build bridges with some of the more sympathetic human settlements, about the hope for a future with less conflict. In return, Jonas and Zyra shared their own story of exile and love, of building a home in the wilderness. When the two visitors finally prepared to leave, Zyra hugged Zyra tightly, speaking in rapid orcish that needed no translation. Jonas saw tears in Zyra's eyes as she hugged her aunt back. Then, to his surprise, Zyra approached him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Through Zyra, she said, thank you for protecting my niece when I could not. Thank you for loving her when her own people turned away. You are a good man, Jonas Jarrett, and I am proud to call you family. Jonas felt his own eyes sting with unexpected emotion. Thank you for giving us a chance. For seeing beyond what we are to who we are. After they left, Jonas and Zyra stood in the clearing watching the sun set over their valley. Zyra leaned against him and he wrapped his arms around her waist, holding her close. Are you happy? He asked softly. I am more than happy. I am complete. She turned in his arms to face him. I have you, I have a home, and now I have my family again. It is more than I thought possible. Good, Jonas said and kissed her forehead. Because I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way. The seasons turned, and life in the valley found its rhythm. Jonas and Zyra traveled to the clan gathering that summer, and Jonas met more orcs than he had ever imagined existed. He was welcomed cautiously at first, but his obvious devotion to Zyra and his willingness to learn orcish customs won him acceptance. He learned to fight with orcish weapons, to speak the orcish language with tolerable fluency, to appreciate the complex honor code that governed clan life. In return, he taught what he knew: farming techniques that increased crop yields, human approaches to preserving food and preparing medicines, stories and songs from his own culture. He became a bridge, just as Zyra had hoped, connecting two worlds that had been divided for too long. There were still challenges, still moments of prejudice and fear. Human settlements remained suspicious of the Stonefang clan, and some orcs still viewed Jonas with distrust. But slowly, painfully, progress was made. Trade agreements were established. Disputes were settled through talking rather than fighting. Children from both cultures began to grow up knowing the other existed as people, not monsters. A year after their binding, Zyra told Jonas she was pregnant. He received the news with a mixture of joy and terror, knowing that their child would face unique challenges being half human and half orc. But as he held Zyra and felt her tremble with her own mixture of emotions, he knew they would face those challenges together, just as they had faced everything else. Their daughter was born in the spring, with green-tinged skin and small tusks in her father's eyes. They named her Kira, combining elements of both their languages into something new and beautiful. She was welcomed by the clan with ceremony and celebration, and Jonas cried as Khazra placed the clan mark on the baby's tiny hand, making her officially a Stonefang. Months turned to years, and the valley became a true home. They added rooms to the cabin as their family grew, eventually having a son as well, a boy they named Joran, who had his mother's amber eyes and his father's stubborn determination. The children grew up bilingual and bicultural, as comfortable with orcish hunting songs as with human lullabies. Jonas watched them play in the yard one autumn evening, chasing each other and laughing, and felt a sense of peace he had never thought possible. Zyra came to stand beside him, her hand finding his automatically. "Remember when you found my mark on your fence post?" she asked, a smile in her voice. "I remember thinking you were insane," Jonas admitted, "claiming a man you had never spoken to. I knew what I wanted. I just had to be brave enough to reach for it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Are you glad I did?" Jonas pulled her close, watching their children play in the golden light of sunset. He thought about the farm he had lost, the life he had given up, the easy path he had rejected. He thought about everything he had gained instead: love, family, purpose, belonging. "Yes," he said simply, "every single day I am glad." Zyra smiled and kissed him, and in that moment, surrounded by the life they had built together, Jonas knew that he had found what he had been searching for all along. Not solitude, but connection. Not isolation, but love. Not safety, but the courage to choose his own path and walk it with someone who made every step worth taking. The symbol carved into that fence post had been more than a claim. It had been an invitation, a promise, a beginning. And standing there in their valley, with his wife in his arms and his children playing nearby, Jonas understood that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Sometimes, love required courage and sacrifice and the willingness to risk everything for the possibility of something better. He had been a lonely farmer, and she had been an exiled orc. Together, they had become something neither could have achieved alone. A family, a bridge between worlds, a testament to the possibility of hope in dark times. As the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Jonas held Zyra close and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me, for being brave enough to carve that mark, for changing my life." "Thank you for being worth the risk," Zyra replied, "for standing with me when the world told you not to, for loving me enough to give up everything." "I did not give up anything," Jonas said firmly. "I gained everything." And in the warm twilight of their valley home, surrounded by family and love and the life they had built together, he knew it was true. The mark on the fence post had said she claimed him, but in truth, they had claimed each other. And that claim, forged in courage and tested by hardship and strengthened by love, had become something unbreakable. Their story would be told in both human and orcish communities, a legend of forbidden love that had bridged two worlds. But for Jonas and Zyra, it was simply their life. Messy and beautiful and real, filled with ordinary days and extraordinary love. Not perfect, but perfectly theirs. As darkness fell and the stars began to emerge, they called their children inside for dinner. The cabin was warm with firelight and laughter, with the smell of cooking food and the sound of small voices telling stories about their day. It was home, in every sense that mattered. Jonas sat at the table he had built, with his wife beside him and his children across from him, and felt gratitude so profound it was almost painful. He had been given a gift he had never known to ask for, a chance to be part of something larger than himself, to build a legacy of love and courage, to prove that the barriers between peoples existed only as long as individuals allowed them to stand. That night, after the children were asleep and the fire had burned down to coals, Jonas and Zyra lay together in their bed, listening to the familiar sounds of their home settling around them. Zyra's hand found his in the darkness, and they lay in comfortable silence, no words needed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would always be prejudice to fight, understanding to build, the daily work of living. But they would face it together, as they had faced everything since that morning when Jonas found a symbol carved into his fence post, and his life had changed forever. In the darkness, Jonas smiled and tightened his grip on Zyra's hand. She had been right, all those months ago. The symbol had told the world he was hers. But what she had given him in return was something far more valuable. A home, a purpose, and a love that had transformed him from a lonely exile into a man who knew, without question, exactly where he belonged.